Hello, everyone. In today's episode, we will be talking about the newly revealed details about the upcoming 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide.
Wizards gave us a brief overlook at the new content, including magic items, art, the Bastion systems, and the DM's toolbox. I am Eddie.
And I'm Eugene, and welcome to another episode of the Middle-Aged
Middle-Aged Barbarians.
Here on Middle-Aged Barbarians, we like to cover a wide range of topics, from tips and tricks on how to run your games, class and monster analysis, media and adventure reviews, and news updates. So whether you're new to the RPG scene or a seasoned player, an aspiring DM, or a jaded veteran like us,
Stick around to watch this pair of guys be barbaric and tear your boredom to shreds.
All right, so we've had a bunch of videos come out lately
Yes, that's interesting. As usual.
revealing little tidbits, little teasers on the new things that they will be including in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah, it seems pretty interesting. It kind of really complements. It kind of pivots a little bit into another sort of style. I think I see here more differences than in the player's guide. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I just hope these aren't like red herring differences and they're just trying to convince us to open a book and read the same stuff just in a different order.
Yeah, or condensed and with more white space, which I love as a designer. I do love white space, but we did a word count on the player's handbook, right?
Yeah, I think one of the producers had sent us like a word count from the PDF files, and it was
slightly less, right?
yeah.
Although it had more pages. But in another way, I mean, making the different order.
There was a less word count. What it probably has more is they mentioned a lot more maps and images and stuff.
Exactly. More tools per se, more formats.
Yeah, one thing I do notice, and we were talking about this before, like the interviews there's 2 or 3 videos that we've watched so far. There seems to be a lot more inside jokes, like more cohesion, more. I don't know. It's like they actually, worked more on this maybe, or gave it a lot more thought.
A lot more strategy, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote down a list of the kind of major changes I've noticed. I know you have your notes, so we can.
No, you go with yours, and I'll compliment.
We'll go over them a little bit. I mean, the first thing they come off saying is that it's getting a major facelift. They're restructuring the book. They're changing the order of the chapters. Mainly like to focus this on new DMs, so it's a little more palatable, a little more digestible.
And the progression, I think they imply that you go chapter by chapter depending on what you need, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like a tutorial, not so much organized as a reference, but organized as a path.
Yeah, as a learning experience. Actually, at the end of the first video is when they mentioned the first 3 chapters, which are going to be like basics, running the game, and they mentioned the 3rd chapter being the DM toolbox, which is ironically, as of recording this video, the last video that they published. So you can carbon date us that way. So I guess we'll talk about the DM toolbox. You want to talk about that now or a little bit later?
No, sure, let's do that.
It sounds interesting.
It sounds really fun, and it sounds interesting how they kind of imply that you will be more able to surmise. If they don't even give you like proper rules how to make your custom content, you can surmise them with examples they at least showed us, no? Like the fireball fungus.
The fireball fungus?
That sounded fun, but it kind of makes sense. Oh, so I can make a hazard that is kind of a plant or something that triggers like a spell.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that before with like sigils or spells or glyphs and stuff like that. But basically the 3rd chapter, which they're calling the DM's toolbox, is like that one drawer in your kitchen that you open up and you put all your junk in there and all the stuff. I think that's kind of like what it reminds me.
Yeah, and those small rules for things that you might not need. For instance, if you're playing an urban campaign with a lot of diplomacy, well, you probably won't use the rules for hazards or for a lot of stuff there, but there's social rules, probably. They didn't mention...
They mentioned alignment. They mentioned like traps, certain conditions.
Chases, I remember. That seemed cool.
2 different like scenarios for chases. They mentioned firearms, which I thought was very interesting. So maybe we can get our Ravenloft high tech level domain
thing, yes, or even I'm guessing not. They're not going to go with semi-automatic and really, really modern weapons.
I wouldn't see why not. I mean, they did publish in the stairs. What was that called again? The staircase, the infinite staircase.
Oh, the adventure for future.
There was the Beyond the Crystal. Was it Beyond the Crystal Cave? My memory's a little shot now. That was the one with all the futuristic spaceship monsters and gadgets and armor and stuff.
Yeah,
So
I guess more like a sprinkle and not a whole campaign setting. Because if you introduce firearms, like really modern firearms, you have to introduce stuff like cars, like some other sort of tech. We really liked I-20 Modern, which was a really...
I'd love to have a 5.5 modern.
Yeah, that would be really cool. That was a very cool system. Shame that it didn't really catch on, but it had a lot of interest. The system itself was really interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, they mentioned, going back a little bit, the alignment. They're kind of talking about how alignment is more fluid. It's not, we're using fancy terms, so I'll say alignment is fluid. In the sense that you don't have a stable alignment that determines your actions, rather your actions will
determine your alignment.
Reflect your alignment, is what they were kind of mentioning.
Yeah, like I told, I'm thinking probably they will establish here how important is alignment to your campaign and give you like a barometer how much you have to think about alignment, because we saw that in the player's handbook. There are not that many rules that use alignment per se, right?
No, but they did include it, which is weird because I could have sworn they were going to take it out.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense with the things we saw, like making orcs kind of non-aligned, a lot of things like that.
I mean, with my new player campaign, they were asking me like about alignment at the beginning. I'm like, don't even worry about it. We'll figure that out as
later,
the game goes
as you
along.
go.
So
Yeah.
I guess in a way I do agree with
The way
alignment
they're made.
being fluid.
Yeah.
I know you were kind of excited about the curses aspect that they were talking about.
Yeah, that seemed hilarious. The stuff you could do, particularly, I mean, what I was thinking is adapting Ranman Half. I don't know if you guys know that anime, but basically part of the premise is that the people are cursed by different puddles, bodies of water, and depending on the puddle of water you fall, you transform into something else.
That died in that puddle.
That died in that puddle. So there's the puddle of the drowned girl. The main character changes into a girl.
Her dad changes into a panda, and I think there's one that changes into like a little pig.
Into a goose.
There's a goose, a bunch of weird stuff.
One into a cat. It's hilarious.
Yeah, a kitty cat.
It's hilarious. I mean, stuff like that.
The remake just came out, actually.
Yeah, one of my friends was complaining that it isn't as sexy as it was before, which is, I guess...
I still wouldn't watch it with my kid.
No.
Not yet.
No, that's for, teen at least, like 13, I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, your kid's almost 13, isn't he?
No. He's 3 years away.
Yeah, I'm really responsible with my son. He has watched stuff that he shouldn't have watched.
Right,
He
well-
already watched Hellraiser, for instance. We watch a lot of... He loves horror, so we watch a lot of horror. And
Speaking of horror, that's not a really good segue. They have an area on dungeon design.
oh, yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, the
Not a Cenobite dungeon, but
I mean, you could make a Cenobite dungeon. That would be...
they mentioned the one in the comment, which we actually thought was kind of a cool idea.
that's
the
a great
players-
idea, yeah.
But we'd add like a switches in gravity. Like since it's round, then depending on where you're at within the dungeon, it'd have to be like a 3D dungeon with all the gravity pointing toward the middle. So you'd have places where you jump and switch gravities and move around and
Doing checks for that. That would be, I mean, yeah. It sounds really like they use the term hook a lot, no? It has a lot of hooks. I'm guessing that's like we said on the player's handbook, the keyword was fluid and versatile. Here is hooks. We're going to have a lot of hooks. So I'm guessing that's what they're going with.
something else that they mentioned, which it is kind of cool. I usually go online and look for random pages to do it, but they had like different generators, like tables and stuff for you can go on if you need to randomly design a little town. They mentioned like if you had downtime, and you can go and they'll have tables that it'll tell you what size, what's the more prominent buildings or facilities available in the village, town, and or city. And even went on to later describe like NPC generators with names, or they mentioned something called like allegiances, or how the NPCs will be reacting to you and the party as the players and how loyal they are.
And basic personality traits like, oh, this one's kind of like the seven dwarfs. This one's grumpy, this one's happy, this one's betrayer. I don't know if that's an actual dwarf, but...
And I think the only other thing that I really noticed, or I took note of, was mob rules. For like when a lot of monsters are attacking. This kind of goes back, if I'm not mistaken, to like when you'd have the big war campaign with a bunch of miniatures. You'd be rolling dice, but more
For groups.
like on a group scale or something grand. Although all this could be easily avoided if we went back to using the minion enemies from 4th edition. Just give them 1 HP, and if you hit them, they're dead.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. But also, I think it's going to... I forgot which this campaign setting was called, but it was really old. It was from 2nd edition, that they had like chivalry rules. So they had a ton of rules.
Was that Birthright?
Birthright, there we go. So I'm guessing they're kind of trying to go with that. With Bastions. Bastions also reminds me of the leadership system from 3rd.
The leadership, but even from like the original system, there was a point where your characters... Part of the thing would be you'd have so much wealth that you would form your own stronghold, which I think is what they were called back then.
Yeah.
And then from there you would even have
Hirelings.
like NPC hirelings and minions that you dispatch to go out and do stuff and bring back treasures or items or resources. I mean, it's kind of cool. They mentioned Bastions being like an optional system. I think once you hit 5th level, I think it's kind of interesting that each player can have their own, and it's like a secondary. It's almost like a little mini game or like one of those like economy board game things. I'm imagining it like that you like to play.
I love to play economy board games. Yeah,
but something like more in the background, or maybe for off sessions, you can make the decision before you go back to the next gaming session or something, and work at it like that.
Or maybe on downtime, if you have finished the main adventure, kill the big bad, you go to your bastion, you do stuff on your bastion.
Yeah.
And there you.
And it's kind of cool because players can put their bastions together, I think, and make one mega bastion, or, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
They came out also saying that the treasure chapter is going to have like more common items, obviously more art. Everything is art for everything. Items, the cover art, they were doing a lot of emphasis. Which we were looking at some of the pictures from the video and stuff, and there was a lot of cool. You were fawning over the city, the copper city?
City of Brass, yeah.
The City of Brass.
They made they didn't call it City of Brass, but it was obviously the City of Brass. And it was really cool, like in lava and illumination. Very, very, very interesting, the art. Yeah,
so it's promising, the design, the
art direction. I mean, even in the player's handbook, although it has some implications that not all of us like, but the art is really good.
Well, but not looking at the images themselves, but rather this is more more holistic view.
Yeah, the whole thing is very well made. Yeah, it has a clear strategy.
So in the treasure chapter, they mentioned more common items. They were going to have like universal magical properties. Like it's not just going to be a flaming sword. You can have a flaming hammer or a flaming spear, or like certain properties that in the original 5th edition was just for certain weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
A more broad use for those.
Yeah, you could have a Holy Avenger mace.
They were talking about adding and expanding on the rules for crafting magical items. I think as players, we can now craft up to rare. Obviously, it depends on your proficiency, your ability, your stat ability, and the spells. You have to have access to certain spells to build, and obviously materials, which as a DM I would make quests for them to get the materials, not just hand it out. But the only thing you couldn't craft as a player, they mentioned, were artifacts.
Which, I mean, it's a universal thing.
And they mentioned adding more artifacts, and they're hitting that nostalgia button again. There's a couple different places that they were talking about where they were going to go back and include like the weapons for the artifacts for the cartoon characters. Yeah, they're really hitting that cartoon character thing.
Yeah, we are the target audience there.
Yeah, a little bit. There's a chapter for campaigns where they are including, I think we called this on a previous video, you can go back and check it. Greyhawk is going to be the basis. Now, what worries me a little bit is that they only say there's going to be like skeletal details. So I'm thinking they're ripping it out and then just giving you like a sandbox, an open map for you to add your own stuff, which goes in accordance to all the stuff that they're adding in the book.
Yeah, and going back to the earlier editions rather than the more, for instance, 3rd, I mean, I could practically, Ravenloft that you mentioned, I could practically picture even Barovia, how Barovia was set up. Like, oh yeah, here there should be a magic there should be a shop like with this and that, and
yeah. So I thought that's kind of cool.
I mean, it's interesting. It's a different focus.
They mentioned adding a more detailed or a more complete cost list or way of getting costs for magical items, because I thought that was actually a really bad part of the 5th edition when it first came out.
Not having that was very weird.
In fact, there's even there's another document that I use home ruled, which is it's a document called Sane Magical Prices, SMP, which has like a whole restructuring of how common items, uncommon items, weapons, armor are priced. Because they were saying there's some really common items that can break your game, so you have to up the cost for those. And there's some things that even if they're rare, they really don't do much. So it's an interesting perspective. I'd like to see what they do with that, how they propose the cost system and how to buy stuff. Which also, like, making an advanced character, I don't know. I guess 5th is more underpowered compared to previous editions. Yeah. But I always thought it really weird, like, I don't know, not knowing how to equip. Even though the rules are there, I don't like them.
Yeah, and it seems that it kind of slightly went back to how it was done back in the day, in 3rd or 4th even. Yeah, because 4th was really specific. You had this many items, this many so forth, if you start at an upper level, right?
What?
4th had a system for...
Oh, yeah, it was just like a gold system. Basically, just give you an amount of gold and you spend the gold on whatever you want. 5th, I feel, is more limited, like, with what tier of magical items you can have. They implemented the attune system, which is another way of controlling it, which I don't really use attunement for my characters, which I'm probably giving them an in-service by not doing it.
Yeah, you're probably balancing the game a bit, but, I mean...
That's okay. I'll just throw bigger baddies at them. And
there we go.
And now they do mention like a lore chapter, which I think is kind of cool. Again, focus for the newer DMs. This is more like general definitions or terminology that, I don't know, like old people like us, we already kind of know or take for granted. But somebody coming into the game probably doesn't know either characters or mythological creatures or gods or places and stuff. So I think they're adding a bunch of definitions or like a glossary in one of the chapters. They don't mention talking about deities, which I will be disappointed if there's not like a more in-depth look on how the deities are working in the main area. But they do talk a chapter about cosmology, the multiverse. I was going to say sigil, but even in one of the videos, they were ripping on each other for saying sigil. What was the correct pronunciation of that city? Sigil or Sigil?
The City of Doors. Just to not get messed up with that.
I'll call it sigil. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, it reads sigil, but it has a different weird pronunciation.
That's so unusual.
So, I mean, that's kind of like the generalities of the stuff that they've been putting out in these videos. I know there's a couple more coming out. If there's anything interesting in them, maybe we'll bring out another video just to share our thoughts. All in all,
it's promising.
Yeah, this is probably going to be the first Dungeon Master's guide that I buy and actually try to read. I don't know if I'll actually read the whole thing. I don't think I've completely read a DM's guide since 2nd edition.
No, I've read both of them for 3rd, and I read a lot of DM guides.
I mean, granted, you were always more of the house DM. I think I just took on maybe 1 or 2 adventures every now and then as a relief, but I don't know.
But back in 3rd, and 4th, rules for 4th, you didn't really even need the DM's guide. It kind of seems that you actually need it now. That's the main difference.
So it'll be interesting to see, especially with all the homebrew variant rules for curses and items and spells. I don't think they've mentioned
crafting spells, crafting your custom spells. But I mean, it's probably something that you can imply with the rules. I don't know. We'll have to see how clear the system is and how obvious it is to change it.
All right, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it seems pretty cool. We're hopeful.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the video. If you haven't already, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And please feel free to leave your comments, suggestions, and questions below.
Yes. Also, come follow us on our other social media like Instagram and TikTok. And join us on our Discord channel over on the Indie Hobby server. Links in the descriptions below.
And as always, remember to rage responsibly. We'll see you in the next episode.